Well, good afternoon, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Rayo here at the home base in Putnam County, getting ready to give you the update on the tropical storm. Still a tropical storm, not yet a hurricane, although the National Hurricane Center has been saying for the last 12 or 18 hours that this storm was going to intensify to hurricane force. And they're still saying that tropical storm Isaias is going to increase to a minimal hurricane when it makes landfall sometime during this evening. The very latest positions, if you have been plotting this on your hurricane plotting chart or your atlas, is at 32.0 north, 79.4 west. That is positioned 120 miles south southwest of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. The storm, as I mentioned, is still a tropical storm, but it is just this side of making it to a minimal hurricane. 70-mile-per-hour winds sustained near the center, and the storm has begun to pick up in speed. The storm track taking it on a course to the northeast, that northeasterly trek, 16 miles per hour. And I have a good feeling that this storm is going to increase in forward speed over the next 24 hours or so. Isaias is undergoing, according to the National Hurricane Center, it's undergoing its daily reorganization phase. We've been talking about this for the past couple of days, that there have been bursts of convection, that for several hours, lots of thunderstorm activity boil up near the center of the storm, which usually is a benchmark of an intensifying storm. But in Isaias' case, this boiling up has only lasted for a few hours, and then it subsided, and then it goes back to a weaker stage. And these phases of convection, these phases of thunderstorms have been happening on and off, again, for the last 24 to 48 hours. So the Hurricane Center is saying that it's undergoing its daily reorganization phase. A ragged eye-like feature now is beginning to show up on the NOAA Doppler radars from both Charleston, South Carolina, Wilmington, North Carolina, and Jacksonville, Florida. And the last Air Force Reserve reconnaissance flight reported peak wind speed of 62 knots in the southwest quadrant of the storm. Isaias was experiencing a reformation. The center of the storm is reforming apparently a bit further to the east, and Doppler velocities of 70 to 75 knots have been observed between 10,000 and 15,000 feet in the northern semicircle. So the intensity right now, according to the Hurricane Center, is being held at 60 knots, 70 miles per hour, which means that Isaias is very near hurricane status. Another Air Force Reserve reconnaissance jet will be investigating the cyclone sometime around 0Z Greenwich time, or 8 o'clock this evening. Again, the storm system tracking toward the north-northeast at about 16 miles per hour. So let's take a look and see where this storm is going. This is the latest information, the 12Z observation from the GFS. And I'm going to move things back a little ways so that maybe the camera can get a better view of what we're talking about. Of course, need I say, here is the storm. Now, this is the position expected, according to the GFS, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Let me just make sure that I've got that correctly. Right, 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, the GFS is projecting the storm to be somewhere over east central Virginia, maybe not too far to the south of Richmond, right there. And that storm system, again, tracking on a northeasterly track. Now, notice, if you will, all of the yellows and oranges and that deep shade of red. That is where the torrential or heavy rain is going to be occurring. We think that the storm's heaviest rainfall is going to be along and west of the track of the storm. So if you are located to the west of the storm track or to the left of the storm track, that is where the heaviest rains are going to take place. We're thinking on the order of maybe 2 to as much as 4 inches, with possible 5 or 6 inch amounts in isolated spots, especially if any convection, any thunderstorm activity gets involved. Now, you may be saying to yourself right now, oh, wait a minute. It's a tropical system. It may become a hurricane. Why is there only, he says, 2 to 4 or 2 to 6 inches of rain? Wouldn't we get a lot more rain out of this? Wouldn't we see amounts of something like 6 or 10 or 12 inches? Now, some of you out there have been sending me or pinging me questions on Facebook asking that question, saying, well, I remember Floyd back in 1999, September of 1999, parts of the Hudson Valley got a foot of rain from that, and that was a tropical storm. Of course, we also have memories, bad memories, of Irene back in 2011, and of course, Sandy in 2012. Although Sandy was not so much a prolific rain producer as it was a wind maker, but you say to yourself, well, why is it that we're not seeing amounts like that? Why are you only saying 2 to 4 to maybe at most 5 or 6 inches with this storm? And the reason will be made evident very quickly. There is the position of the storm as of 8 o'clock in the morning, according to the GFS. Watch where it goes in just 6 hours. Boom! In 6 hours' time from East Central Virginia, by 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, the center of the storm has jumped all the way up to Philadelphia. That is a very rapid movement. And if the storm moves that quickly, no matter how hard the rain is going to come down, folks, no matter how heavy the rain is, if it's moving that quickly, it can't put down a whole, tremendous amount of rain in a short interval of time. Not to, put down the fact that, 2 to 4 or 2 to 5 inches isn't a lot of rain. It is. No, don't get me wrong. And in fact, you get that much rain in only 4 or 5, 6 hours, that's going to lead to flooding, flash flooding especially. But the reason why we're not anticipating, or nobody is anticipating, tremendous amounts of rain, let's say 8, 10, 12 inches or more with this storm, is the movement. It is going to be moving very, very quickly. Now, there it is, according to the GFS, as of 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And when we get to 8 o'clock tomorrow evening, boom, look at that. From Philadelphia, the storm has made it all the way up into the northwesternmost corner of Massachusetts to just to the east of Albany, New York, as of 8 o'clock tomorrow night. That's a pretty fast-moving system. In fact, I mentioned at the onset of this presentation that the storm right now, as I said, is moving toward the north-northeast at 16 miles an hour. And I said, I have a feeling it's going to be going a lot faster than that in the coming next 24 hours. If the storm moves as quickly as what the GFS is saying, and let me say, if you've been with us the last several days on our updates, we've been talking about the fact that the GFS has been the fastest by far of all the models. This storm conceivably could be moving 35, maybe even 40 miles per hour during the course of tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening. It's down in Philadelphia tomorrow around 2 o'clock, and it's up here just to the east of Albany as of 8 o'clock in the evening. That gives you an idea that maybe along about 4, 5, 6 o'clock tomorrow, that thing is going to be rolling along very quickly past the immediate tri-state New York City area. And again, notice all of the oranges, yellows, and reds indicating torrential or heavy rainfall with this system. I'm just going to back this up a little bit. Notice that here's the storm. The track is this way. And notice that, again, all of the heavy-duty rains are to the left or to the west of the storm. So if, again, you are located along the path, near the path, or especially west of the path of the storm, that is where the heavy-duty rains are going to be occurring. Again, around here, 2 to 4 to maybe in some isolated spots, especially if a thunderstorm gets involved, 5 or maybe even as much as 6 inches. But that'll be it. I doubt very much, so he says, I doubt very much that we're going to see anybody in the tri-state area see more than 6 inches of rain out of this. All right, maybe, a few renegade spots, an isolated spot might see more than a half a foot. But I'm thinking that in general, the general amount of rain that's going to be falling in the immediate tri-state area, 2 to 4 inches, and that would be, again, to the left side or to the west of the storm track. Now, how about you folks who live on the right side of the storm? Take a look. For example, Long Island and Connecticut. What happens to you? Well, you're in the green here, and you're still in the green when we get into early tomorrow night. So that tells me that the rains for you will not be quite as significant, quite as heavy. We're saying for Long Island and for much of Connecticut, 1 to 2 inches with maybe a few isolated 3-inch amounts. But again, the heavy-duty rains are going to be occurring to the left or to the west of the storm track, at least in accordance with what the GFS is saying. And notice also that the pressure gradient, see all these squiggly lines here, those are the isobars. The tighter these isobars are, the windier it's going to be. We think right now that the windiest or strongest winds are going to be located, in contrary to the heaviest rains, the heaviest winds are likely to occur along and immediately to the right or to the east of the storm track. So that means you folks who live right along the Jersey shoreline, if you live across the south coast of Long Island, I'm thinking that for you, you'll be seeing winds tomorrow gusting anywhere from 30 to 60 miles per hour, maybe even a bit more in a few places. 30 to 60 miles an hour, of course, can do damage to trees. It could also bring down a few power lines. So don't be surprised if we see power outages tomorrow, especially so right along the Jersey coast and especially across parts of Long Island, especially the south coast of Long Island, because there is where the winds are going to be at their strongest. Now, let me back up a bit to where we started, 8 o'clock in the morning on the GFS. Now, I'm going to show you what the NAM, the North American model, is saying. The North American model is a little bit different than the GFS, using different types of equations. But the one thing that is heartening here is the fact that whereas the GFS, and I give it credit, for the last few days, the GFS has been by far and away the fastest. All the other models were lagging behind by as much as 6 or 12 hours, even as much a few days ago as 24 hours behind the GFS. The GFS has been on this in terms of speed. We have no real questions in terms of the track. We always knew that the track of the storm was going to be basically along or maybe just inland from the Atlantic coast. It was always the speed of the storm that was the thing. And now with the NAM, the North American model also pretty much is going to match the GFS in terms of the speed or track of this particular tropical cyclone. There it is, according to the NAM, as of 8 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. Let's jump now to 2 p.m. on Tuesday. Well, actually, with the NAM, we go by 1 hour increments, but by 2 p.m., you can see it's a little bit to the south of the GFS track. The GFS track had it over Philadelphia. The NAM has it over Delaware, just about ready to move into South Jersey. But still, that's pretty close to what the GFS is saying. And again, as we move upwards now to 0Z or 8 o'clock tomorrow evening, well, the storm, which according to the GFS is up over or near Albany, here it's just to the north of New York City on the NAM. A little bit slower, but still you get the idea that the storm is going to be moving at a pretty good clip nonetheless. And you can see also that the positioning of the heaviest rains, according to the NAM, a little bit different than what the GFS is saying. Instead of saying specifically that it's going to be to the left or to the west, the NAM is suggesting that the heavy rains are going to be out ahead of the storm and off to the left. You can see here, notice that immediately to the north of the storm track is where the heavy rains are. And there's a stripe here where heavy rains are falling to the west of the track. But again, I think that when you take a consensus of both the NAM and the GFS, and also I got to look at the European model as well, you can pretty much say that this thing is going to be moving very rapidly, a good forward speed into and through the tri-state area during tomorrow afternoon and on into early tomorrow evening. In fact, let's show you here. I'm going to show you my projection. This is based upon a consensus of the GFS. Actually, there are two GFSs at the moment. We have the GFS, the regular GFS, and also we have what's being called the parallel GFS. Already, the folks over at NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, are working to improve the GFS model. And so we actually have two GFSs. We have the regular one that's now in use and also an experimental version, which after they become competent enough, will eventually replace the current GFS, the parallel version, that is. And so I took a look at those two models, the GFS and the parallel GFS, and also there are two different NAM models. There's the 12-kilometer NAM, and there's also a tighter, a bit more tighter grid at 3 kilometers for the North American or NAM model. So I took a look at all four of those models and came up with this consensus. And the consensus basically says that at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, that storm is going to be near Philadelphia. At 8 o'clock tomorrow evening, the storm is going to be just to the south of Albany and close to the New York-Massachusetts border. And by 2 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, all the way up into northernmost New Hampshire, moving across into Maine. And then by 8 a.m. on Wednesday, the storm, if it still has tropical characteristics, by then it may have turned out to be extratropical, will be somewhere up in the northernmost part of Maine. So that's my plot. This is my own plot, or my version of what is going to happen regarding the track and the speed of the storm, based upon 4 different models: the GFS, the parallel GFS, the 3-kilometer NAM, the 12-kilometer NAM. And right after I made this plot, I took a quick look at the European model. The European model came out just after I made all of these plots, and the European model is pretty close to the track that you see here as well. So I'm fairly confident that this is what's going to be the case with this storm tomorrow. And as I said, it looks like it's going to be rolling on through and past us by about 5 or 6 o'clock tomorrow afternoon here in the immediate tri-state New York area. Now, that is my version. That is my plot of what the storm track and speed is looking like. I want to show you now. Now, notice that the valid time, the time that I made this plot, was 3 o'clock in the afternoon today. About an hour and 45 minutes after I made this plot, the folks down in Coral Gables, Florida, at the National Hurricane Center, came up with their projection as to where the storm was going to go and what it was going to do. And here you see it on your screen right now. This is the very latest. This is the 5 o'clock plot from the National Hurricane Center. And what do you know? It looks like, based upon all the models that they looked at and all of the indications that they have been checking out, that this is pretty much the track that I just showed you that I made with my plot. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, close to Philadelphia. 2 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, already up in northern sections of New Hampshire. And then by the time we get to 2 p.m. on Wednesday, it's now down to a tropical depression. This is in the vicinity of the Gaspé Peninsula of Quebec. So by then, it's just a depression, just a big mass of rain and cloud and some spotty, gusty winds. And it'll continue that way up until 2 p.m. on Thursday. By that time, the storm will be pretty well washing itself out over Labrador in eastern Canada. The blue, that indicates the areas where tropical storm warnings have been posted. They've now been posted as far to the north as southern Stonington, Maine, all the way down through Cape Cod and Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, across the coastal areas of Connecticut and Long Island, down the Jersey Shore, down across the Delmarva, and down across the coastline of North Carolina. And we do have hurricane warnings that have been posted. That's in the red. That would be for coastal sections of northeastern South Carolina and also into southernmost coastal sections of North Carolina. The storm, as I said, may very well, by the time it makes landfall sometime early this evening, may very well be a minimal hurricane, something to watch. But whether or not it's a minimal hurricane or whether or not it's a tropical storm system, it's still going to bring some strong gusty winds and rain to our region. Let's take a look at one other thing that we should be concerned about. And for that, I'm going to show you what right now is Tornado Watch number 413. This is valid from just a little while ago, 4:35 this evening to 2 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. This box is the aviation zone for a tornado watch. The counties that are in the watch, or specifically in the watch, have been outlined in red. I show this to you because this is the approximate area where later tonight the storm is expected to make its first landfall. And whenever you have a landfalling tropical system, and whenever you have such a system to the immediate east or to the right of the storm track, there is sometimes the potential for tornadic activity, strong to severe thunderstorms and tornadic activity. Well, we're going to be seeing the storm pass very close to, almost directly over, or just to the west of New York tomorrow afternoon. So there's a distinct possibility, I think, tomorrow that we may be dealing with perhaps a tornado watch here. Now, we had a tornado watch yesterday, and we actually had in Sharon, Connecticut, a report of a tornado yesterday afternoon. Well, again, it's not out of the question that along with the heavy rains and the gusty winds, that we may have to deal with strong to severe thunderstorm activity, especially from New York City and points east across Long Island and on into Connecticut again, and maybe for parts of the Hudson Valley as well. That having been said, the folks over at the National Weather Service, actually at the Storm Prediction Center in Oklahoma, have outlined our area tomorrow for a slight chance of severe weather. You see that here in the yellow. That encompasses mostly the coastal plain of Virginia, the Delmarva Peninsula, much of New Jersey, the lower Hudson Valley, New York City, Long Island, Connecticut, on up into central Connecticut, and also including Rhode Island. This area right here is under the gun for a slight risk of possible severe weather tomorrow. And just to give you an idea of what they're thinking of over at the Storm Prediction Center, they are thinking that we may see a 5% possibility. This is why I mentioned the possibility tomorrow for a tornado watch maybe popping up. This area, this brown shade right here, is the zone of 5% possibility for a tornado. Well, you're saying to yourself, well, Joe, 5%, what's that? That's no big deal, is it? It is, because normally for us in this part of the country, when they issue probabilities for severe weather, they never go any higher than 5% for a tornado. As I've seen in some cases out in the Midwest, out in Tornado Alley, like Kansas and Missouri and Oklahoma, sometimes they'll issue in advance the possibility or potential of maybe as much as a 10% probability for a tornado, but it never gets that high in our section of the country. 5% is about as high as you'll ever see, but that's exactly what they have for us tomorrow, is a 5% possibility, and that is flanked by a smaller 2% area in green, and that goes all the way up to central New England, and that goes as far back west as eastern Pennsylvania, northwestern sections of New Jersey, and on up into the mid-Hudson Valley region. So there, we have the possibility of strong to severe weather tomorrow. Now, I want to just stress again, here's what we're thinking. We're thinking that tomorrow morning, when you get up, we're looking for some precipitation. We're looking for some rain, steady rain. Maybe it'll be on the light side by daybreak tomorrow morning. Then the rain is going to rev up, and for the 6-hour time frame, the 6-hour interval from noontime tomorrow to 6 p.m. tomorrow, that is when the storm's rain is going to be at its worst. Noon to 6 p.m. That will be when those of you who are located west of the storm track, and that would pretty much include most of New Jersey, part of the Hudson Valley, maybe New York City as well, that is when we're expecting 2 to 4 inches of rain to fall. That's a lot of rain to fall in just 6 hours. That could lead to flooding. There are flash flood watches that are in effect for that. And again, if thunderstorm activity gets involved, strong to severe especially, that could mean torrential rain. That could mean that there could be some spots picking up as much as 5 or even 6 inches of rain, all in that 6-hour time frame from approximately noon to 6 p.m. Those of you who are watching across much of Long Island, especially central and eastern Long Island, and much of Connecticut, you will be seeing rain, but probably not as heavy because you're on the right or western quadrant of the storm track. So you will be seeing probably on the order of 1 to 3 inches, more like 1 to 2 inches, but maybe 3 inches in isolated spots. Again, be it 1 to 3 or 2 to 4 or even as much as 6, that's a very heavy amount of rain to talk about in a time frame of only 6 hours. Again, that could lead to flooding. So during the midday, during the lunchtime period, through the afternoon, up until early tomorrow evening, that is when we're expecting the storm to be at its worst in terms of rain. In terms of wind, those of you watching on Long Island, those of you who are along the Jersey Shore, those of you who are in areas along the coast of Connecticut, that's when we could see winds possibly as high as 30 to 60 miles per hour in gusts. For folks who live along and to the west of the storm track, if you're in that area, you won't see as much in terms of wind. You'll see a lot of rain, but not as much wind, maybe more like 20 to 30 mile per hour in gusts. In any case, those kind of winds can bring down a few tree branches, a few tree limbs, and yes, dare I say, maybe even a few power lines, which means that we do look for the possibility for some, not all, but for some of you, the possibility exists for some power outages. I'm sure that I certainly hope that your electric company, your power supply company are aware of what's going to happen tomorrow and will certainly be ready at the guard to get out there and fix whatever or repair whatever lines come down in the aftermath of the storm. After 6 o'clock tomorrow, after 6 o'clock, I think the worst will be behind us. After 6 o'clock tomorrow, we may see the rains come, down to hardly anything, just maybe a few lingering showers. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if after sunset tomorrow, we'll have the clouds breaking and you might even get a view of that full moon. Or it's a full tonight, but it'll be nearly full. It'll look practically full to the eye during tomorrow. Let me bring up the animated view of the hurricane again, because I want to mention one other thing, and that is in terms of high tides. Those of you who live along the water, either in New Jersey or across Long Island's south coast, or maybe the north shore of Long Island, or the Sound Shore of Westchester, or the Long Island Sound Shore areas of Connecticut, it is important to know that there could be some coastal flooding and there could even be some beach erosion. Because of the fast speed of the storm, because it's moving very rapidly, I don't anticipate that we're going to be seeing anything more than one high tide cycle to be concerned with. Again, if this was something that was moving slowly, we might have to be concerned with a couple of high tide cycles that might cause flooding or beach erosion. But I think it's really going to all boil down to one high tide cycle. Now, if you live along the ocean shoreline of New Jersey, or let's say in New York Harbor, the Battery, or perhaps along the south coast of Long Island, you can expect that high tide will come between roughly 8:38 and 10:06 a.m. tomorrow morning. That is the high tide cycle that you should be concerned with. Fire Island, high tide tomorrow, 9 a.m., 2-foot tide expected. At least that's the projected tidal heights. Of course, that doesn't take into account the fact that we have a storm swirling your way, pushing with a southerly or southeasterly wind all of that water onto the land. Same for Jones Beach, high tide, 8:47 a.m. tomorrow morning, 3.8 on the tide height. The Battery, 9:39 a.m., 4.8-foot high tide heights. Montauk Point, 10:06 a.m., 2.3-foot heights. Sandy Hook, 9:07 a.m., 4.9, and at Seaside Park in central New Jersey along the coast, 8:38 a.m., a 4-foot tide height. I think in many ways, those places I just mentioned are lucky because, as I said, the worst of the storm is going to come between about noontime and 6 o'clock in the evening. These high tide cycles I just mentioned are going to be hitting sometime just before the worst of the storm will be arriving. So in one way, you're trying to find a silver lining to this dark cloud. That may be it. The fact that the high tides will not coincide along the ocean shorelines with the worst of the storm. Now, for those of you who live near Long Island Sound, it's a different story. Along Long Island Sound, be it along the north shore of Long Island or the Sound Shore of Westchester and Connecticut, we're thinking that the highest tides are going to come sometime between 11:45 tomorrow morning and 1:08 in the afternoon. That puts you right at the beginning of the worst of the storm. So there most definitely will be a problem. There, especially, you'll have to watch out for coastal flooding and maybe a touch of beach erosion as well. Across New Rochelle, for example, high tide, 12:49 tomorrow afternoon. High tide height, 7.9 feet. Bridgeport, Connecticut, 12:36 p.m. tomorrow. High tide height, 7.1 feet. Glen Cove, 1:08 p.m., 7.7 high tide height. Port Jefferson, 12:40, 6.9. Orient Point, 11:45 a.m., 2.7 feet on the tide. So I think we've pretty well given you all the information. I'm now going to close the shutter. I assume now that the folks are on the chat board. If you have any questions, I hope that you have posted them. We're going to get to the chat board right now, and I'll try to answer your questions as best as I can. Let me just get everything, all of the maps off. I'm kind of like Joe Chiaffi. He's got so many windows that are open sometimes that it's difficult to get everything done all at once. So rather than show you all of what I'm doing right now, I just prefer to close the shutter for the moment. I'm going to open the shutter in just a very few seconds, and then we'll be able to talk about what we anticipate from your questions on the chat board. So let's open up the shutter now. Boom, there I am. And let's see who we have on the chat board. A lot of people on the chat board tonight. Donna Levessieur, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Donna. I'll just call you Donna. Peeking in, Philip Nazi, how are you? Paul Roman, Dennis Cassia, I'm looking at all the folks here. Tim Pendleton. Tim says, does a forward speed enhance the wind volatility for Long Island? Tim, most definitely. I have often said you could have, for example, a Category 1 storm with winds, let's say, of 75 miles an hour. But if that Category 1 storm is being pushed along at a speed of 30 or even 40 miles an hour, suddenly you're talking about a storm literally pushing all those winds and with additional momentum, bringing winds to gusts to well over 75. We kind of saw that with the 1938 storm that hit Long Island. It was moving like a train at 30 or 40 miles an hour. Same with this storm coming up tomorrow. So yeah, the volatility for enhanced wind effect is going to be there tomorrow, I think, for coastal Jersey and for Long Island. I am saying right now 30 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts. It would not be surprising to me if, when all over is said and done, that we get reports in some places on Long Island or coastal Jersey of winds in excess of 60, maybe even getting to or even above hurricane force of 75 miles an hour. So it is a serious situation, and you have to indeed take into account the fact that this storm, its ES, is going to be moving very, very quickly. It's not like some tropical systems that mosey or move along at 5 or 10 or 15 miles an hour. This is going to move like a train. This is going to be moving at 30 to even 40 miles an hour, and that certainly indeed has to be taken into account when we deal with the maximum winds tomorrow in the afternoon. Chuck Cardillo, hi Joe. I hope you are having a great day. This has been one crazy storm. It has certainly been that, Chuck. It's going to be even crazy tomorrow, I think. I hope I'm going to be able to do a show tomorrow. I'll be back here tomorrow at 5 o'clock. If I have power, if my power company hasn't lost power, if my home hasn't lost power, I will be here tomorrow because we're going to be right in the thick of things probably with the storm during tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Let's see. Any more questions? We got a lot of people again on the chat board. Let's see. The quicker this thing moves, the better. Yeah. In one way, that is true. The faster it moves, the faster it'll get out of here. But again, the faster it moves, also the better it has the chances of enhancing the wind effects. Chuck Cordilla writes, I remember Donna back in 1960. Chuck was 7 years old and came on the first day of school. I lived in Brooklyn, and 2 huge maple trees came down. Yeah, Donna is a noteworthy storm. And in fact, we did not have, Donna was the last tropical cyclone of significance, the last hurricane to affect New York City from or the tri-state area from 1960 to 1976 when we had Belle. Belle kind of broke the drought. We did have Doria, which was a tropical storm that was moved right up along the coast and over New York City in 1971. But the last time we had like a 16-year lull period between hurricanes in the tri-state area, between Donna in 60 and Belle in 1976. Belle also came in August the 8th, I believe. And Belle, by the way, also, just like this storm, coincided with a full moon or a nearly full moon. Let's see what else we have here. Chuck also mentions he had better watch it. He could get a speeding ticket. Yeah, indeed. Let us. And somebody else points out, Steve LaPonte, pointing out, I need just 79 more subscribers to reach 1,000. Yes, I don't like to do a commercial, and I don't like to sound like one of those NPR stations that beg or grub for money or for contributions. But your contribution, if you are a subscriber, is to go out and tell people about this channel, the Joe Rayo Weather Channel on YouTube. Because if I can get to 1,000, then everything begins to change. This way we can enhance the YouTube broadcasts. We can maybe get sponsored by a couple of places. All of that can happen, but it can only happen after we reach the magic number of 1,000. We're closing in on 1,000. So if you're a subscriber, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. But if you are a subscriber, tell your family, tell your friends, tell anybody you can tell to please subscribe. As you are well aware, it doesn't cost anything. And if you're not a subscriber, if you're on this channel right now and watching me for the first time, subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. Go right ahead. Be my guest. And it'll help us to get to 1,000. According to Steve, I haven't looked lately, Steve, but according to Steve, we're 79 away from 1,000, and hopefully we'll get there over the next day or two. It's amazing how when we have a major event like this, a tropical storm or a hurricane, possibly in the southeastern states, how everybody just runs to social media to find out the latest. And a lot of you have been coming here over the last few days to get the latest updates on the storm. Any more questions on the chat board? Oh, I see my wife is on the chat board too. She's talking to Alaska Railroad. We wish we were in your neck of the woods. This is my wife, Renata. It's been so hot and so muggy here, like the Amazon jungle. The cicadas were very loud last night. That's absolutely correct. Last night about, I think it was like 1:30 in the morning, my wife just was startled. She like woke up and she's saying, "Do you hear that? Do you have a window open?" I said, "No, the window isn't open." I think, and the noise that some of these insects make in the overnight hours. I mean, it's crazy. And last night they were really loud. They love this warm weather. They love the muggy weather. And last night I went to bed. I checked my weather station, 1 a.m. You know, we're up here in the boonies, so to speak, the cooler zone, so to speak. It was 80 degrees at 1 a.m. this morning here in rural Putnam County, at least where I am. 80 degrees. Ugh. Oh, yes. I side with you, Renata. I wish we were up where Alaska Railroad is right now. It certainly has got to be a lot cooler. Alaska Railroad says, "Good to see you. Yes, it's been in the low 60s here." Alaska Railroad, I have forgotten what it's like to have temperatures in the low 60s. It's been like almost every day. The coolest we've been able to get is like 70 degrees. I wish we'd be able to get down to the low 60s or even the 50s. That doesn't look like it's going to happen, at least any time soon. Kenny Salerno writes, "I hope you had a good day yesterday." Yeah, yesterday was my natal day. That was my birthday, and yes, I had a good day while I was dodging thunderstorms in the evening and all of that hot, sticky, humid weather. And Alaska Railroad also adds to my wife, "It sounds like you and Joe are going to be melting in high humidity." Well, thank goodness for Mr. Carrier, the man who invented air conditioning. Thank goodness, because of air conditioning, we haven't had to suffer with all of this heat and humidity. But boy, when you step outside, it is something else. All right, I think. How long have we been going? We've been going 38 minutes and 16 seconds. So let me boil it all down for you quickly once again. Heavy rains, heavy showery rains, possible flooding, the worst of it coming between noon and 6 o'clock, 2 to 4 inches, maybe a bit higher, areas along and west of the storm track. The storm will be passing nearest to us around 5 or 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. To the east of the storm track, maybe anywhere from 1 to possibly in the heaviest amount, 3 inches of rain. Heaviest winds to the east of the storm track. That includes Connecticut. That includes Long Island, where it could be 30 to 60 mile per hour or higher in gusts. Possible power outages because of those strong winds. Somewhat less, 20 to 30 miles per hour to the west and north of the storm track. Again, during the afternoon hours tomorrow. Worst of the storm coming tomorrow between noon and 6 o'clock. Tropical storm warnings in effect. Flash flood watch in effect. All kinds of stuff. It's all going to be bundled into that 6-hour period again between midday, noontime tomorrow, and about 6 o'clock. Lighter rains and winds before noontime. Light rain and winds after 6 o'clock. Probably shutting down completely by nightfall. In fact, by nightfall, maybe even a bit of clearing with even some moonshine, some intervals of moon breaking through the cloud cover in the aftermath of the storm after it passes by tomorrow evening. So there you go. That's it. We've done our best. I've done my best to update you. We'll be back with you depending upon whether or not we have power tomorrow at 5 o'clock Don't forget the Joe and Joe show tonight on Joe Chiappi's YouTube channel. That comes at 7 o'clock this evening, as always, when I team up with my weather compadre of, dare I say, over 40 years, Joe Chiappi. So on behalf of Joe and I, we thank you for watching then. I thank you for watching on the Joe Rayo Weather channel here on YouTube. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please do. And again, we'll be back with you again tomorrow, assuming that we have power. Thanks very much. Have a good afternoon and evening, and stay safe and au reservoir.